Right, so the next ones are the hadiths. We've had the ideas from the Quran, but in the hadiths are the sayings and utterances of Muhammad, and in particular one from his son-in-law Ali, who would become the caliph himself, the fourth caliph. I heard the apostle of God say, "There will come forth a people at the end of time, young in age and foolish in vision, who will speak the best words in creation, but their faith will not pass their throats." This is a quote from Muhammad he's talking about. "They will pass through their religion, or pass through religion, as an arrow passes through the thing hit. Therefore, whenever ye meet them, kill them, for verily whoever kills them, there is a reward on the day of resurrection." And that is from both the collections of Muslim and Al-Bukhari, the two prime sources for the hadiths, the two best known sources. What's interesting is this was written in 1924, and even in those days there were apologists for Sharia, and in particular one group that were obviously quite famous at the time, 1924, were known as the Woking School, and that is basically of the Ahmadiyya sect. Well, the Ahmadiyya sect are not popular within Islam. They're not seen as being Muslims by most Muslims because of the nature of the religion itself. But the Ahmadiyya put out that there is no such law demanding death for those who leave Islam, and it has always been a religion of tolerance. Well, the reality is it's not tolerated by Islam and not tolerated by Sunnis. You may recall the shopkeeper who was murdered up in Glasgow, and that individual was murdered because he was friendly towards non-Muslims, and that was enough for this individual. They look on the Ahmadiyya as being apostates anyway, so this taxi driver from Bradford, where Nissar Hussain used to live, where he had been attacked, where he had lived his life under threat continuously for 20 years, that Muslim taxi driver drove up from Bradford and murdered, knifed to death, the poor shopkeeper up in Glasgow, Ahmadiyya. So the Woking School, 1924, got it wrong then, didn't they? Let's look on now then at the next section, section 7. Right, here we are. As for apostates, it is permitted to kill them by facing them or coming upon them from behind, just as in the case of polytheists. Secondly, their blood, if shed, brings no vengeance. Thirdly, their property is the spoil of true believers. There we go. So what we're looking at then is that this comes from the Orthodox jury consults, the Orthodox jurists, those in the Hanafi, the Maliki, the Shafi and the Hanbali schools, and the Jafari, as we'll see in a second, for the Shia. So the Shia sect at that time was only about 15 million, but their law books on apostasy are no less severe. As it says, every individual of the male sex who, born in the religion of Islam, apostatizes, no longer enjoys the protection of Islam, but is ipso facto condemned to death. His wife should be separated from him. And there's not much joy either for the ladies, I'm afraid. The woman guilty of apostasy is not punished with death, even if she was born in the Muslim faith, but she is condemned to perpetual imprisonment, life imprisonment, and is to be beaten with rods at the hours of prayer. That's 5 times a day. There you go. That's very tolerant. Let's look last of all now at this particular fellow's issues with regards to apostasy, and where he talks about in the University of Michigan, and don't forget this was written back in 1924, so there were some Muslims already in America, for those of you who are from America watching this, and one of the missionaries talks about his visit there to the school in Michigan, university. But the sword of Damocles that threatens and intimidates every convert hangs there too, as by a thread. A few years ago, I met an Indian Muslim student at the university who was eager for baptism and had a thorough knowledge of the New Testament. But, said he, I'm afraid to confess Christ publicly because my father is in the Punjab. The arm of Islam, he continued, is long and cruel, and I do not know what might happen to me if my father heard that I had denied his faith and trampled on my long heritage as a Muslim. 1924. America was being warned then. Fortunately, America had Nissar coming along to wake them up. Here in the UK, Nissar has only recently got onto GB News. The story about the Islamic laws and the genocide case against those 11 countries is important. It is avoided by who? MI5 are supposed to be our security protection against internal threats. What have we got? Over 40,000 now, maybe nearer 50,000 security threats amongst the Muslim community. That is something like 1% of all the men in the Muslim community. They're about 4, 5 million, 6 million, whatever it is, maximum maybe nowadays. So we are looking at a huge percentage in real terms as a security threat to this nation. And what are they doing about it? They're not addressing these apostasy laws, which is why so many people are frightened in Islam. They daren't leave it because of those apostasy laws, and they know about them and you don't. So this is why this book, you can get it off Amazon for about $10.95. Bear it in mind, the law of apostasy in Islam, and this by this guy Svema. Make a note, go and get it. You can give it to your MP. You can give it to your council leaders in your local council. You can educate them for a few pounds and make it plain to them what the issues are with Islam. And you should especially do so if you're a Christian, because this is by a Christian missionary. This is a book that you should be handing to your bishops, to your pastors, to your congregation leaders. Right, let's look at the next section. Even Gibbon, famous author, obviously, Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, made it very clear. He said, talking about the impunity of, or lack of it, for those who live under Islamic law codes in the early days, right up until, as you'll find out in a moment, the 1900s. In a time, however, of tranquility and injustice, the Christians have never been compelled to renounce the gospel or to embrace the Quran. But the punishment of death is inflicted upon the apostates who have professed and deserted the law of Muhammad. These are the issues. Same thing with the Copts. Copts are the surviving remnants of the Christians who lived in Egypt before the Muslims arrived. What happened to them? Again, as they were told, is death to go back if they changed their religion. Once they became Muslims, they could not go back to become to take on Christianity again. And I'm going to show you something here. This is an indication of what life was like for the Christians under Islam. And we're just going to look here at the 19th century, the last 100 years before the Caliphate fell under Ataturk, and he dismantled it in 1924. So let's look at 1822. Island of Chios, 50,000 Christians, nearly all of the inhabitants of the island of Chios, which however you pronounce it. 1850, 10,000 Nestorians murdered, butchered in the Kurdish mountains. 1860, 11,000 Maronites and Syrians were murdered in Lebanon and Damascus, Christians again. 1876, it's 15,000 this time, and you're looking at that was the Yazidis. No, sorry, that was the Bulgarians. 15,000 Bulgarians. And then 1894, 10,000. Where was this? That was yeah, apologies, I've lost that somewhere. But there we are. We're talking about, in that century alone, by the time they killed many more Armenians, they had killed over 196,000. And this was before World War I, when they killed over 500,000 Armenians. And remember what Hitler said. Who remembers the Armenians now? Yeah, who does? Who does? Well, there's your numbers. They're all there on page, that must be page 94. It's all here in this book. It's not just about Islam's threat to Muslims. It's a threat to those who come under their law codes. But we deal with this through getting that law code sorted out in terms of apostasy, looking for reform of that law code. And the second genocide case document covers that issue of complicity. So the MPs and all those who are misleading you on Islam, and don't forget Ed Husain wrote about this in his book Among the Mosques. He said the politicians are lying to you. They are lying. That is the problem we've got. We've got a bunch of liars representing us who are not really representing our interests. They are representing their own interests, their party interests, and in particular their own get ahead up the greasy pole. So I'm asking you to wake up, understand what Nissar's done in the United States and what we need to be doing here in the UK. So never forget, Islam does not mean peace. It means literally submission. You are to submit to Allah. And those who submit to Allah are to control those who do not submit to Allah but become dhimmis. These are people who are following a pact, a dhimma. You become a dhimmi with certain law codes that you become submissive to the Muslims. Maybe they're just a minority as they were in the original days, but if you're living obviously in somewhere like Egypt now, they are now very much the majority. So, but what is the way we can address this as a people, as the United Kingdom and Western Europe and the West in general? We must demand, not demand, we ask them, why don't you reform these apostasy laws and join the rest of the world in understanding that you cannot threaten people who leave their religion? Why should they? We have these freedoms of belief. You want to maintain that kind of threat, then you're not welcome here. You are not welcome here at all. And those apologists on our side, they need to understand their complicity, that under the Genocide Convention, these people can be done for complicity. It is an offence to be complicit in the genocidal threat to our ex-Muslim brethren, to ones who are in Islam and want to leave it, and then also to those poor Armenians. What happened to them? That was even before the major genocide in the First World War. They'd been slaughtering Christians in the Ottoman Empire for the whole century before that, as I've just explained to you. These are lessons they're not teaching you. Why can I talk about this? Why would you listen to me? As I said, my name is Neil Petrie. I'm formerly an intelligence corps officer, special duty, special forces, infantry, platoon commander. I have studied this for decades because I lived in Muslim countries for 15 years, running companies all over Central Asia and the Middle East. I've got great friends who are Muslims. They're not here in this country in general, but except the moderate ones who obviously they're not an issue, but they must all understand that these apostasy laws must be revoked, because if not, then the West is living with this time bomb within it, which is already giving off many danger signals. Look at Nissar, how many other people are being murdered. The rape gangs, that's the treatment of dhimmis under the law codes of Islam, of Sharia. So when someone says he's supporting Sharia, we have to look at it carefully and decide, can we repatriate this individual immediately? And we should start, first of all, with the Sharia jurists, the Ulama. These are the major threat to the Western law codes, and the internal threat from our politicians, church leaders, just as bad, police chiefs. They need to study this book, or several, not only the law codes, but this one as well. It's very clear, simple and cheap. Getting your hands on this is not easy, and it's very expensive. But this makes clear what the threat is, what the issues are. Right, so this is not by accident this is happening. It's not by accident that you are being misled as to what Islam represents. It's not being misled, you are being misled about the law codes under Islam. This is deliberate. The Ulama have had a strategy, obviously since 632, upon the passing of Muhammad, that war is deception, as Muhammad himself said. This is the issue that in the West people need to get a grip of, need to understand. It's a strategic and systemic issue. And then you've got the alliance with the hard left, who believe that they can take over, obviously the system, get it more socialised, more socialistic or communist. That is their aim. And they believe they can use these minorities as a tool to help them in that. But they are playing with fire. absolutely playing with fire. So it's time now to ignore these clowns, these people who are telling you what the wonders are of Sharia. They are not wonderful. They are a deadly threat to our ex-Muslims. They're a deadly threat warning off Muslims from leaving Islam. That is the reality. It is a genocidal threat that needs to be addressed. And look what else they're doing to undermine us. The left in particular, looking at taking on the SAS, getting them into court. So your leading soldiers, the bravest soldiers, the most frontline of our team, go out there to address the threats that most folk wouldn't go near. They're dealing with it, but they are being hounded and put through a life of misery in terms of legal confrontations, etc. This is deliberate. Not doing this to the police, if you may notice. What are they doing about the police and the rape gangs? Are they being addressed in court like this? Are they being hauled over the coals? No. There you are. Double standards, two-tier justice again. That's where we are. So, I'd like to show you one last couple of books. In particular, this one, JFK. If you'll notice here, it's by Colonel John Hughes Wilson, who was in the intelligence corps when I was serving. And he makes clear that governments are not to be trusted. The whole of the Warren Commission report into the JFK killings was a tissue of lies. Governments are not to be trusted. You need to think very carefully about this whole representative malarkey. It's all tripe. So I, in fact, wrote a book. You can get this for free. You can listen to it for free on the website DD Right Now. That's directdemocracyrightnow.com. DD Right Now. They explain how we, the people, take control through a system similar to that the Swiss have, where you have the right to call referendums. And Nigel Farage has backed this. I gave the book to Nigel Farage back at the back end of 2023, and since then, on quite a few occasions now, he's backed it. And last time I was on television, I think it was November the 10th last year, saying that we must have this right to call referendums on important issues that politicians are ignoring. Would you have had 10 million migrants coming into this country in the last decade or so? Would you? If you'd had the right to call referendums on it? Would you have the Sharia being applied in terms of in those Sharia councils in the UK? Would you have had Nissar under threat the way he has been as an ex-Muslim? We need to deal with this. The tools are the genocide case. Genocide case in the courts. £50,000 is required for that. You can put money into the case through the GoFundMe website webpage, which is on the legalizeapostasy.com website. Genocide case 2 will take on those who are complicit, politicians, church leaders and others who are a threat to the British people and the American people and the Westerners in all, through the genocide that they wish to commit on those who leave Islam. And these people are complicit in apologising for that, covering it up, and basically remember that ignorance is no defence in law. And now the word is out there. This is happening in America. They are waking up. We need to do the same here. So I'll sign off now, but that basically is how we can defend the West, as I said in the cover of my book. I didn't cover the Islam issue there because I was writing about the democracy issue at the time. I have obviously worked with Nissar for quite some time now, since 2017. We've worked, and basically he is now in the process of saving America. So let's all get together and save the West. Thank you.